Hi, my name is Thalia Ertman. I'm currently a master's student in the dual MA-MSc program between Columbia University and the London School of Economics in International and World History. I am also currently an RFE Fellow with the European Institute. I applied for the RFE Fellowship in the first semester of my master's program, and I'm so happy I did because it allowed me to begin the research on what would become a master's dissertation well before all of my other classmates, and it also allowed me to really choose an interesting topic that I would not have found otherwise. My current research focuses on 3 women's organizations and their involvement with the Crusade for Freedom, which was the domestic fundraising and public awareness campaign for Radio Free Europe in the 1950s. The 3 women's organizations that I'm looking at are the National Council of Negro Women, the National Council of Jewish Women, and B'nai B'rith Women. So there are 2 Jewish women's organizations and 1 black women's organization. The reason I chose these organizations is because of a document I found at the Eisenhower Archives, which was our first archival trip for my fellowship year, that listed the organizations who supported the Crusade for Freedom, and I found it interesting that black women's organizations and Jewish women's organizations would support an anti-communist campaign. So I'm looking at why these organizations that are usually known as being politically liberal, both in terms of their associations with the Communist Party pre-1945 and their later involvement with the Civil Rights Movement, would choose in the 1950s to support this more conservative anti-communist propaganda campaign in the United States. So I chose to investigate these 3 women's organizations, what I call non-mainstream women's organizations, meaning that they fell outside of the mainstream, both in terms of gender makeup and racial and ethnic identity. And I chose to examine why these organizations that were also politically liberal decided in the 1950s to participate in this more conservative anti-communist domestic propaganda campaign. I think that this research is important because most of the literature on Radio Free Europe is very much organizational history and very much focused from the top down, but the Crusade for Freedom in particular is a very grassroots campaign, and I wanted to look at who these grassroots organizers were, and I think this is an interesting topic because it complicates our idea of who was involved in anti-communist campaigns in the United States in the 1950s. It actually was black women and Jewish women, amongst others. And it allows us to look at what motivated people to join these campaigns. It wasn't just blind patriotism or just rote belief in American values, whatever they may be, but they had their own motivations in terms of political maneuvering, distancing themselves from their Communist Party affiliations in the past, and also a little bit of patriotism. So it's very interesting to look at these motivations and see why people make the decisions that they do, and also to kind of add a little bit more color and flavor to the history of both Radio Free Europe and the Crusade for Freedom.